Whew, just a few months into this new year, we've already been experiencing some pretty crazy weather, but I think the craziest part of all of it were the things I heard people saying about it. Now, first off, we had an unusual cold snap around the middle of January that broke 17 different temperature records here in BC for the coldest days in recorded history, while also extending deep down into parts of the States to break even more records and lots of people's water pipes. Now, around this time, I heard quite a few remarks along the lines of, "What global warming? It's freezing out. Climate change is a hoax," which is almost expected these days, unfortunately. But then just over a week later, we were hit with an incredibly warm atmospheric river that broke over 30 temperature records here in BC for the warmest days in January, while also bringing some of the highest levels of rain we've experienced this time of year, leading to all sorts of flooding and infrastructure problems before heading south to California to break similar records and cause similar destruction down there. Now, at this time, many of these same voices were very quick to point out that it's an El Nino winter and that warmer weather is typical, so nothing to worry about. Never mind the fact that record highs and lows set within a 2-week period of each other isn't exactly normal, which brings me to a point that I can't believe I actually need to reiterate here. Weather is not climate. Weather is short-term localized atmospheric conditions influenced by large-scale global conditions, whereas climate refers to the overarching trend of those weather patterns and how they change over the long term. The January cold snap was caused by a weakening of trade winds that usually isolates that cold air up at the North Pole, causing it to leak down, and the atmospheric river, influenced by an El Nino, created a concentrated jet stream of warm air and moisture, both totally normal occurrences to some extent. However, in nearly all climate models and projections, because of the influence of anthropogenic or man-made climate change, the frequency and severity of extreme weather events like this is only projected to increase. But then this is where things got really interesting, because now a new set of voices popped up saying, this isn't climate change, it's just the government controlling the weather using geoengineering to scare us into conforming so that they can control us. And this one threw me for a bit of a loop, honestly, but let me break it down. See, geoengineering is the process of using aerosols in the atmosphere to influence localized weather events, such as trying to create rain or sunny high pressure systems, etc. But it's important to understand that it still only works within the broader atmospheric conditions that may be present. For example, if you want to try to make it rain in a valley, you can release aerosols that condense water vapor in the air to form clouds and influence the rain, much like conifer trees have been doing for eons, but it doesn't guarantee it. Those aerosols are only able to condense water moisture that's already present there, and if there's no moisture in the air, it can't create rain. This isn't an X-Men movie where you're just able to summon storm clouds out of nowhere, and while it is an evolving industry, the suggestion that geoengineering has the ability to create continent-wide weather patterns and events is both an incredibly simplified and horrible misunderstanding of the technology and the scale at which it's actually able to influence atmospheric conditions. I first heard of these theories after the Lahaina fires on Maui, when many online proposed that it was part of a larger government plot, and unfortunately, more and more theories like this are popping up all across social media with very little founding in truth or even reality. Theories like this are dangerous because they prey upon people's pre-existing distrust of government and institutions and uses that to arbitrarily divide up our society even more to create more confusion, less cohesion, and thus ensure that less action is taken that could potentially interfere with the profit-making systems for those at the top. Now, I understand that in many cases, distrust of the government is valid, sure. Many governments have done some really cussed up things around the world and are still doing it today, but what's different here is that it's not any one or group of governments that are just now making up the concept of climate change. This has been a well-documented thing for over 60 years now from some of the smartest, most brilliant scientific minds in the world who all arrived at the same conclusion independently, regardless of what country, culture, ethnicity, or religion they've come from. It is not a belief or something you can just dismiss as hearsay if it makes you uncomfortable or if you don't understand it, or use it as a scapegoat to pin your distrust of the government on. It is a well-understood reality of the world we live in, no different from gravity, which has been created by the actions of our species over the past few centuries. Unfounded theories that disregard its validity for any reason ultimately distracts people and society from the reality of the situation we find ourselves in, which prevents any constructive change from actually taking place, and that is just incredibly foolish and dangerous. We know what the problem is. We all just need to stop bickering with one another about whether or not, or how extreme, or how fast, or how severe the impact of climate change is going to be, and instead accept the situation we're in to then refocus our energy on creating real solutions through real science by creating alternative energy sources to fossil fuels, the dismantling and restructuring of our current colonial capitalist systems that have created this whole mess in the first place, and proper restoration and stewardship of our lands and waters to ensure intact biodiversity and ecological function to help mitigate the changes that are coming our way, whether or not we like it.